Some of you might not know this, and by some of you, I mean none of you. That door leads directly to the Peppermill Poker Room. And I'm gonna walk through it and ask to be dealt in. An overview of Lake Tahoe as seen from Heavenly Ski Resort to start vlog 305. As you may have guessed, Anna and I were there for me to ski and for her to snowboard one last time for the season. It was my first time ever skiing at Heavenly. And thanks to the temperatures, it was a bit of a slushy affair. And no trip to South Lake Tahoe would be complete without seeing the Tahoe Night Monsters of the ECHL. A team partially owned by Tim Tebow, which I do think is a little weird. It was a week when Bugsy, our vlog correspondent, would visit one of the biggest poker rooms in the eastern US, and we'll have a correspondence piece coming up later on. Before we get to the actual vlog you are here to watch, I want to give you a look at a hand that had happened a couple of days earlier because I thought it was a really interesting spot and would be curious to hear your guys' thoughts. It would come when I am in the straddle. Middle position 2. Under the gun 1 would call, and the cutoff would make it 25. Big blind would call that, with +1 completing, and I would defend with King 4 of hearts, which it's just an obvious thing to do. So with $100 in, the board would come out 6-8 deuce with a couple of hearts, and no one bets. Turn is an offsuit 7. Big blind would now lead out for $40 with +1 folding. And with what is now a combo draw, I'm going to make the call here with the cutoff folding. So, with $180 in, we are now heads up to the river, which comes the 7 of hearts. So I make the king high flush, but the board pairs. I'm hoping this guy won't bet all that big so I can comfortably raise this bet. But he does bet fairly big. Given the size of the pot, he makes it 125. This is a guy that I have seen here a few times, not all that often. Not super tight, but certainly not super loose either. So the question becomes, obviously, should I raise here? I think I'll get people saying both things, but I give this a little bit of thought before deciding that I probably can get away with raising if I come to grips with the idea that I am going to have to fold to a re-raise. So I just min-click it back to 250, because he's got to have some weaker flushes some of the time here. He doesn't give this any thought at all, and snap calls, creating a $680 pot, and given the game flow involved here and the way these things tend to go, even though I have a king-high flush, I know once I get snap called, that I'm going to be losing. If he had taken as much as 5 seconds to call, I think I'm probably winning. But the snap call is an indicator that I am not. So we have a $680 pot. I show my hand and he shows pocket deuces for the small full house. If I were in his position, I am definitely re-raising the river with that hand because it just looks like I'm going to have the nut flush here a lot of the time, but he decides not to. Wouldn't have mattered for him anyway. I'd already come to grips with the idea that I was folding. But could it have been a river spot where I saved that last bet? Still thinking about that one as we roll in to this week's footage. I would come into this Friday session after not playing at all the day before, but not because I didn't show up. I came in at 2:30 p.m. to find 2 full 5-10 games. One was great. The other was pro-infested. So I pulled a Reno grinder and simply opted not to play instead of playing in a lousy lineup. Sometimes you got to do that. And yes, that is the shirt that Reno Grinder wore on that particular day. On this day, we'd fire up a straight 5-10 game with no rock and winner straddle on table 1 at 10 a.m. Apparently they've been doing that throughout my absence the last week or so. The first hand would come when I looked down at Ace King of Diamonds, early position and raised to 40 under the gun. Hijack calls, as does the big blind. So with 125 in, the board would come out Ace 10-7 Rainbow, and the big blind checks. I bet half the pot here, making it 60. Hijack quickly mucks, but the big blind gives it a lot of thought before ultimately making the call. So with 245 in, the turn is the 9 of spades. Big blind checks. Definitely a recreational player, and by the way, one that would go on to have an amazing day. I want to keep him in there with a lot of hands, and I just down bet to 80 in this spot. But unfortunately, he thinks better of it and mucks immediately. By the way, before I forget to mention it, the winner of our last vlog giveaway, David Weaver, who won the Peppermill Silver Coin, emailed in a pic of him having it in play at the Hideaway Poker Club in Hebron, Texas. Next hand comes when under the gun with limp. Middle position raises to 40. Low jack calls, and it's on me in the small blind with ace queen. Definitely a spot where a squeeze is an option, and I elect to take that option, making it 150. Problem is, both of these guys are very tough to beat. One is a longtime pro named Josh Prager, I think it is, who sometimes comes to Reno during tournament series and plays like 1-hour sessions prior to being in tournaments. It's funny how he never seems to play longer than that. Anyway, it folds to middle position, and he calls the 150, also a very tough player. Prager is in the low jack, and he also calls. So this pot now has $465 in it. So hitting the flop wouldn't suck, and sure enough, Queen 10-6 rolls off the deck. I'll admit, I wasn't exactly sure about sizing here in terms of how to get paid off from worse hands by two tough opponents. I'd settle on $220, and 2 quick folds would occur. I'd get a look at the schedule for my Vegas Golden Knights taking on the Minnesota Wild in round 1 of the playoffs. A series that, if it goes the distance, I'm going to have issues when it comes to watching the last 2 games. More on that at a later date. Over the next 2 hours, chips would be flying into pots. Unfortunately, none of them would be mine, but big pots would still occur. With one player dealt out, I look down at pocket 9's middle position and open to 40. Button calls, and the big blind defense. So with 125 in, the flop comes out 5, 4 deuce, 2 diamonds. The big blind checks. I bet 60 with my overpair here, and it doesn't take long for both of these guys to call. So with 305 in, the turn is the 10 of clubs. Big blind checks. I'm obviously going to be somewhat concerned here, but I think that I can still bet for value to get paid off on a draw-heavy board here. And it's possible that these guys have each other's outs. And that turn card shouldn't change anything, unless I'm specifically up against 10x of diamonds. I bet 125. Button calls. And then the big blind, kind of an OMC type, who's definitely the sort of guy that would slow play a set here. He raises to 300. I don't even give this a second of thought. And I fold this hand. The other player would actually call the 300. So there'd be a heads-up pot to the river after I'd folded the turn. And the big blind would take down the pot of just over $1,000 with a bet there and a fold by the button. I would then flop top pair and a flush draw in a spot where, based on who was betting, the top pair clearly wasn't good. And it would turn out that I was glad that I missed my flush draw, as that wasn't live either, and I would lose about 150 in that spot. I'd look up to see my buddy B making a return to the room, playing 3-5. I would then lose another 150, trying to turn pocket 6s into a bluff against Crazy Joe Namath. It happened on a jack-high board, and in typical fashion, it just so happened that Crazy Joe had flopped a set of jacks on that board. What can you say? The man owns me. Also, speaking of him, I considered buying a bottle of his favorite tequila on my last trip to Costco, but I decided that I'm going to wait until A, I get a house, which I'm going to do this year, and B, I get into the black on the year, which I still haven't done. Both must occur before I can celebrate with that Don Julio. And the next hand would involve Crazy Joe as well. We'd get a $20 straddle from the cutoff. 7-handed, I have King 10 of diamonds first to act and make it 60 over this straddle. He folds, but Crazy Joe in the small blind calls, and that OMC type guy that I was talking about earlier, kind of an unknown, but a semi-reg, calls out of the big blind. So with $200 in the pot, the flop is 9-10-4 rainbow, and it gets checked to me. So I have top pair here and backdoor diamonds. I'm going to be ahead here the vast majority of the time, so I bet 100. And to my surprise, neither one of these guys goes anywhere. So this pot has ballooned to $500 already, and the turn's the queen of spades. Both blinds check. So Should I continue to value bet a pair of tens with a king kicker against 2 blinds here? Another kind of agonizingly close spot. The theme of 2025 poker for me. Thought about it, eventually opted not to bet, as both guys are known to love to slow play hands, and obviously Queen Jack now has me. So the river is the 6 of spades. Small blind checks, and the big blind now bets out for 200, and I just can't see him trying to bluff both of us out here. Now, the problem is I also can't see him betting Queen Jack for value and just knowing it's good here. Even though against me and Crazy Joe, it's probably going to be good a lot of the time. But in this spot, I don't see that happening too often, so I had to assume it was going to be a bigger hand than that, even though obviously bigger hands than that are tough to get. But knowing that I would have to worry about Joe behind as well if I were to call here, I would fold the hand. He would fold behind as well. And the chips would get stacked by the big blind in this hand. And I had pulled off the task of turning a winning session into a losing one. This is a mid-session update. There is something new in my life, and I will show you what I'm talking about at the end of this vlog. I table change over to table 5 because it looked to be the better game. And the first hand I would play there would come when I would call a $105 3-bet with pocket jacks, and the flop would come ace, king, queen, which I found to be slightly below average. The new table featured multiple guys who give action, including Mr. W, though he would leave early on, John, the concert merch king, and James, the actual professor. But, somewhat naturally, the most significant hand I'd play at that table wouldn't come against any of them. I'd pick up ace, king of spades, +1 and raise to 35. Middle position calls immediately, and the small blind ends up coming along also. So with 105 in, the flop is king 4 deuce with 2 hearts and 1 spade. Small blind checks. I bet 65 here. Obvious spot to bet an amount like that. Player on my immediate left in middle position calls quickly, and he's going to know that I have a pretty big hand here. And with 235 in, the turn is the 3 of hearts, which obviously isn't ideal, but I think ace-king is still going to be a bet here. I mean, there are people that say ace-king is capable of winning a no-limit hold'em. They say it. And they say it even more on king-high boards. Now, if you've watched my vlog since 2018, you would never think in a million years that people do say that, but I can assure you they do. Anyway, I bet 110 here. He double checks his whole cards, which means nothing because I know he's going to be super balanced in that spot. With half the time he's going to know what he has, and the other half he's going to be wondering, does he have a heart in his hand? He gives it some thought, finally calls. So with 455 in, the river is the 6 of spades. I'm first to act here, and I have to believe that he's going to be capable of showing up here with some king queens and king jacks a decent amount of the time. And if I check, I think he's only going to be betting if I'm beat. So I had to consider sizing to keep those kind of hands I just mentioned in there. I make it 145. And he starts thinking, and starts thinking some more. As he did so, I actually had the thought pass through my head like a semi-truck through a tunnel. Damn it, Deach, you son of a bitch, you finally played this hand right. You're either going to get paid off or get a fold here. One of the two is going to happen. But no. After about 30 more seconds of thought, he announces 400. And I wanted to vomit all over the table. I know the player very well. This is a fold. I make the fold. Didn't expect the next thing to happen that happened. He would show his cards, give me a look at 6, 7 of hearts for the turn flush, and we fall even deeper into the hole on this day. We get a $20 straddle under the gun. I have pocket aces in the low jack and make it 75. Small blind then 3-bets me to 275, which is always a fun thing to see in this spot to make an obvious statement. I don't give this much thought. Slow playing was out of the question in my mind. I know this guy's going to have a big hand here. I put in the 4-bet, making it $550, leaving myself exactly that much behind. And after about 10 seconds, he announces that he's all in, and what has become an $1,100 pot. I ask him if he wants to run it twice, and he says yes. Pocket kings, No surprise. And in what is also not a stunning development, a king peels off right away on the first flop. At this point, I'm sure that surprises no one. Fortunately, the last king would not show up on board number 2, so I do avoid getting scooped, which I guess is nice, but a golden opportunity to turn this day around results in a break-even hand. It wasn't my last hand of the day, though. I don't want to show what I had in the last hand of the day because, well, the other guy's going to watch this vlog, but I would fold a pretty big pair on the river after calling a $200 3-bet before the flop with it. It would get checked all the way down on what was at the river a 10-high board, and he would jam all in for more than the pot. I assumed that he was aware that the runout was a terrible one to bluff. Now, I didn't know that he knew I had the hand that I had, but based on that and several other factors that I'm not going to disclose, I would make what was either a really good or a really bad fold. En route to racking up and booking the loss. All right, yet another day where I wish I'd played a 4-hour session and bailed. Obviously, things started out pretty good. Did not get better, got a lot worse, in fact. Losing that hand with the ace-king on the king-high board, because why would ace-king ever be good there? And then making a pretty damn big fold with an overpair against a really strangely played hand. But I think that was the point, to play it strangely. Not sure. Anyway, a $1,087 loss. I've played poker in previous years, and I've hated it less.
Hey Ben, how's it going? I am at the Foxwood Casino in Connecticut, just playing a little bit of poker. They have high hands today, $300 every half hour. Let's go in here and see what we can do. Hey Ben, Bugsy here. I am at the Foxwood Poker Room. Really great room. They got like 54 tables, have all sorts of games. They have stud, they have no limit, they have 1-2 PLO, 2-5 PLO. Really like the layout of the room. Love the whole atmosphere in here. Foxwoods is a great location and really easy to get to.
All right, coming at you from Sparks to wrap up this vlog, a city I've never lived in, but one that Anna has, as I record this from her backyard, shortly after her and I celebrated our 2-year anniversary of being together. I know that's not a milestone year, but for me, it's a long time, and I'm very proud of it. And that relationship means everything to me. And perhaps it was in honor of that, perhaps it wasn't. But she had thrown the idea out there that her and I don't become parents, but become co-owners of this girl. This is Josie. She's a golden doodle. Now, some of you are going to make comments about dogs on this vlog in the past. I'm looking at you, Dennis. Don't say it. Just don't say it. But I was once an owner of a golden retriever. Obviously, no more. As much as I miss him, those of you that have watched this vlog remember the days of me and Leo going to the park together. But now having a new dog in my life for the first time in several years is something I'm very excited about. So far, she's been absolutely phenomenal, and Anna and I getting the chance to co-raise her is going to be a fun little thing we can show you at the end of the vlogs here occasionally, because obviously the vlogs are 90% poker, 10% life, and obviously you see which section this part falls in. So that'll wrap this edition of the vlog up. Hit those like and subscribe buttons. It's great for the channel, and I genuinely appreciate it. You can also follow along on Instagram at bendeach. I'll see you back here next time.